I would like again to begin by acknowledging that the Université du Québec à Montréal is located on unceded indigenous lands. The Kaunakahaga Nation is recognized as the custodians of the lands and waters on which we gather today. So Chage, Montreal is historically known as a gathering place for many First Nations. Today it is home to a diverse population of indigenous and other peoples. We respect the continued connections with the past, present, and future in our ongoing relationships with indigenous and other peoples within the Montreal community. So I'm for the most known, but not Najat and Rebecca. So I'm Katharina Niemeyer. I'm the co-organizer of the conference, and I'm very happy to say that it was really a nice conference. I met a lot of nice people, but not everyone. It's like in weddings, you know. So we got married a lot the last days. I don't know with whom, but whatever. So I want to thank again the International Association for Media and History and also all the council members for chairing, for the confidence in organizing this conference, and also the freedom, because I did maybe some things that were not like used to. There was no keynote and stuff, so it's like that. And I think we saw a lot of important things that we will need in the next years. It's like more research creation, changing also how we do work at university, opening up for questions of decolonization, opening up for seeing and inventing new methodologies, etc. So I want to go into detail, but this is what I could hear, especially from the younger generations. And I think this is important, finding new and other languages. And our last panel, which later Dominique will introduce, and our three plenary speakers came out of what we just read, the great abstracts, and saw, wow, it's internationally so intense, the proposals we got. And we wanted to have Najat and Rebecca here, but Canadian immigration, and I'm very happy it's recorded, and I'm going to share it with all the embassies and consulates I was in contact with. We're saying that most of the visas can't be given because it's not of commercial interest. So as I said in one of the mails, the commercial interest can sometimes come like maybe in 5 or 10 years, accordingly to archives. And that, as you can see, that a lot of archives like CBC can make a lot of money out of the past, but it seems that the international collaborations of that, it's not enough. So I say it because I think it's important to say. I didn't prepare it actually because it's so emotional, but I think it's all the things we have to do in the future, like to bring people together. And it's, if you want to be inclusive, and I mean, Canada is always this, oh, we're so welcoming and inclusive. It's not so easy. That what is said, and I think it's our role to change things with the power we have, even if it's not a lot. So all this said, I already said thanks to IAMHIST. I want to thank the Social Science and Humanity Research Council, the Canadian governmental research council, and maybe also send them some words about the question of the visa, but this is other things to do. The research center I'm part of, which is Culture, Art and Society, who also contributed as a sponsor, as well as Archive and Counter Archive, and Antoine, who had to leave, but thank him again for that, and also the wonderful panel yesterday we could see on and the screening from Jennifer Dysart. Also the Media School and Faculty of Communication, and of course Routledge. And I also would like to thank Sylvain Brosset for the technical assistance. He did not only assist technically, he also gave a very fascinating talk. So there are a lot of the technical people here who also really were implicated intellectually. So just to say, and I think that it is long. I would just say the prénom, you know, for all those. I want, well, of course, Céline and Dominique, but also Vanignan, Pierre, Carla, donc Sylvain, Coraline, Luella, Corinne, Estelle, Sarah, Véronique, Ola, Florence, Dominique and Céline again, you're on the last of the alphabet, whatever. Well, thanks again really for all your help and in organization of this event. And now I'm done. So it's Dominique Trudel, who is a professor at Audencia Business School and also media historian. He will introduce and share our last panel, and I will try to do the Zoom technique.
Okay, thank you, Katharina. Welcome everyone. Thanks for your persistence. You'll be able to, I mean, you all make it to the last panel of this conference, so thank you for being so persistent. So this last panel will be on the topic of archival urgencies. And when we were discussing with Katarina and Selina the program of the conference, we thought that it was a very topical question, in the sense that if we're here to reflect and to think about the archives of the future, in a sense, it's really important that we keep making archives and we keep building archives and preserving archives. So the three presentations we pick for this panel relates to these challenges, both at a very practical level, but also at a more theoretical level. So the first presenter is Rebecca Ohene-Asah. Rebecca is a documentary filmmaker based at the National Film and Television Institute in Accra, Ghana. She has a PhD degree in Museum and Heritage Studies from the University of Ghana, Legon. She is co-founder and director of Ben Pahali Young Filmmakers Festival, which has since 2015 mentored young people in filmmaking. She also teaches courses in African film theory and documentary filmmaking at the National Film and Television Institute. Rebecca's research interests include cinema heritage, documentary studies, museum practice, and archival studies. So Rebecca, I think we will begin with your presentation, and I will later introduce Najat and Magdalena. Let's do it this way.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for the lovely introduction. So my name is Rebecca, and I would like to present to you on a topic called Revisiting Osofo Dadzie, Egalitarian Archival Practices and Access to a Nation's Most Cherished Television Content in Ghana. Okay, so this video is a short documentary, a piece of a documentary film that we made about audiences who had watched Osofo Dadzie, crew members who had watched Osofo Dadzie, players who had been in Osofo Dadzie, and I just wanted to use that as some kind of a context, to my presentation. Unfortunately, you couldn't see it, but that is it. So I'll just start. Audiovisual archives are undoubtedly a significant component of a people's cultural heritage. In Ghana and in other developing countries, audiovisual archives are believed to encompass significant repositories of post-colonial expressions and remnants of the decolonization of the people's intangible heritage. An important aspect of this heritage is found in the audiovisual archives and libraries of the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation, that is the GBC. The GBC was established in 1965 and enjoyed a monopoly as the only television station in Ghana until the 1990s. Over the last 6 decades, GTV or GBC TV has produced many television contents that have sought to shape the moral fabric of the Ghanaian society. Aside news, documentaries, magazine programs, and entertainment programs, GBC TV has produced television dramas such as the Akan drama, Cantata, Showcase in Ghanaian languages, and other English language dramas. Now, an important Akan drama show that the organization produced is the Osofo Dadzie drama series, which aired on primetime slots from the early 1970s through to the mid-1980s. Shipley 2013 suggests that the show was developed as a counter-alternative to the existing English language dramas such as Avenue A, which targeted elite Ghanaian audiences. The show's content was an amalgamation of different Ghanaian cultural elements, such as music, dance, folklore, and concert party, which was woven into a sustainable television programming for the masses. Its morally educated nature is believed to have mirrored the national consciousness of the country in terms of contemporary issues. And this is by J 2014. Ukadike in 1991 also suggests that at some point, Osofo Dadzie was dubbed into English language and was distributed outside Ghana, and in the diaspora, which heightened its popularity. Whereas this show's lifetime could be referred to as the echelon of Ghana's television drama programming, its contents are currently inaccessible. Now, the series are not only trapped in an outdated technology, but a large part of the Umatic, Betacam, and other analog tapes stored at the GBC library archives have been destroyed in a major fire at the GBC, which happened in 1988. Now today, although Osofo Dadzie is an active, cherished memory for the generation who grew to watch it, the few materials saved from the fire are still trapped in an inaccessible technology. Now that was the video I was trying to show you, where a lot of the audiences who watched it were talking about, the memories they had about it and all that. Now in 2021, as part of an Imagining Futures project, which is funded, it is launched at the Exeter University. The funding is coming from that university. We began a study into the remnants of Osofo Dadzie, and our sole objective was to see what is there, what people remember about it, and to find a way to create access into the content of the show. Now, the nature of our collection was such that it allowed us to think of the remnants of Osofo Dadzie beyond the confines of the GBC, which was the the official place where they had these materials. Now, whereas the GBC's mandate makes it a national repository which archives national audiovisual materials, the responsibility to preserve Osofo Dadzie's show became a collective endeavor. Now, we say this because crew and cast members had kept copies of Osofo Dadzie, to the extent that when the copies, or when the library got burnt in 1988, the GBC put out a call, and most of the copies they got back were coming from ordinary people who just recorded copies of these show and kept them, as well as crew members and then cast members. Now, the call from GBC was an opportunity for a lot of private collectors, such as Abepe Show, to demonstrate their nationalism. Abepe Show, I'm singling him out. This is, he was a private collector who reportedly donated over 30 episodes of this show. Now, mind you, this show had aired from 1972 up to the middle of the 1990s, and it aired every week. So you can imagine the number of episodes. Now, he had about 30 episodes, which is small, but considering the fact that almost all the copies were burnt, this was a big thing coming from somebody who, a private person. Now, Abepe Show worked as a musician and a music producer in the early 1970s. By virtue of his work, he came into contact with key performers in Osofo Dadzie and ended up developing a professional relationship that included assisting the group with tours around the country and to other parts of the world. And while doing this, he acquired bootleg copies and marketed these to audiences in the country and in the diaspora. Regardless of the fact that the state broadcaster had been donated, they got all these copies. As at the time that we were collecting data for this study, the state broadcaster was only able to give us about 5, which were on Umatic. almost everything I think they had were destroyed. We didn't find any of the ones that were donated to them anymore. Now, the most worrying part of this was the fact that GBC, was apart from the fact that it didn't have the technology that it had to play those materials. The materials were also moldy and dirty. They were not kept very well. I wanted to show parts of the GBC archive, but I felt I shouldn't wash our dirty linens in public, so I didn't show it. But GBC had only 5 copies to give to us. Now, interview responses from audience members suggested that Osofo Dadzie is still considered an important show in Ghana's television history. The memories of the show contextualized within its socio-political subject matter and the euphoria that met each week's episode helped to establish Osofo Dadzie as an important, intangible heritage for most Ghanaians. Whereas the restored copies can barely be screened for a season on television, the memory of the show and the impact that it had on audiences is what for this study stands out as a valuable legacy. The memory of it. Now, the memory of Osofo Dadzie could influence the creation of new and current television shows that could ignite the development and investment in other shows with the potential to educate and entertain audiences like the way Osofo Dadzie did. The remnants of Osofo Dadzie is expected to be exhibited widely. Now, when we had to get these materials, I mean, I put it here, the difficulties in navigating GBC politics. It took us about a year before we got permission to receive those 5 copies that I was talking about. I know time is not on my side, so I might not be able to go into that. So I'm going to be rounding up. So we collected a lot from these private collectors and then crew members who had kept some, and then also cast members. Now, as I said, the remnants of Osofo Dadzie, we expect to be able to be widely exhibited and used in education. So we sent the copies that we salvaged, we digitized to GBC, and they have promised to, find a way to let it come back into the mainstream. Now, to conclude, the issue of who gets to decide what gets remembered into the future, for me, is what becomes crucial in this short talk. And my argument is that the role of ordinary members of society become very crucial when we are talking about archives and even how they are preserved and how they are used, how they are assessed, and then all that. And I guess I just want to end here by saying that the memories of the way ordinary people are able to memorialize these materials, keep them, make them their own, and then are able to make them accessible and know that is important when we talk about multivocality and multiple narratives in the kind of heritage that we try to, build. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rebecca. Now time to introduce our second presenter, Najat Al-Sherida. Najat is a specialist in media and media culture with research focus on Gulf cinema, and particularly cinema in Kuwait. Al-Sherida has directed and produced several films, taught for seminar on filmmaking, organized and led seminars and workshops for international filmmaking professionals, and have carried out extensive other work connected to the broad goal of promoting the Kuwaiti film industry. So we're delighted to have you, Najat, and the floor is yours when you're ready.
Hi, thank you very much for giving introduction about me. I really appreciate what Rebecca has presented. Today, I would like to discuss about the impact of the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait, the destruction of the archive. I'll just try to share my screen. Okay, I'll discuss the impact of the Iraqi invasion in 1990, specifically focusing on the destruction and recovery of film archive. I'll explore how this event has affected our understanding of Kuwaiti filmmaking history in the context of decolonization by identifying three phases of Kuwaiti film industry. I'll highlight the significance of archival resources and explain how the destruction of archival resources has posed challenges for scholars and reconstructing the archival of Kuwaiti film cinema. How can I go to? Okay. I'll start with the evolution of the Kuwaiti film industry. In my work, I proudly identify Kuwait as the first country in the Gulf region to establish a film industry, tracing the evolution of the Kuwaiti film industry. I'll identify three phases. A brief archival news clip showcased the transformative influence that the discovery of oil had on the nation. The discovery of oil in the late 30s marks the first phase of Kuwaiti film industry as associated with the importation of film technology and the arrival of documentary filmmakers who recorded moving images of Kuwait industry and the culture. As we can see here, this is the old Kuwait city. Most filmmakers used to come to Kuwait to film it for the oil companies. This is the old gate, and this is Sheikh Ahmed Al-Jaber Al-Sabah, the president of Kuwait at that time, showing his happiness because Kuwait has imported the first oil exportation, and people were celebrating in Safait Square. This square used to be famous for celebration in Kuwait at that time. However, archivists have encountered immense difficulties in gathering these early films. Examples. As a result, archivists have had to rely on fragmented records and collaborate with international resources to reconstruct the loss of archives. For example, here the film. Can I go to the? Sorry. For example, here, the film Son of Sindbad, it was produced in 1939 for an Australian anthropologist and traveler. And his name is Alan Villers. He sailed to Kuwait from Yemen to the Gulf region, and he was interested in filming the Kuwaiti divers, and recorded the life and culture at that time. And his film is like one of the most valuable films because this is the first film considered to be shot in Kuwait at that time. As I continue my remarks, I'll share a brief clip from his film. We can see here Sheikh Ahmed Al-Jaber sitting beside Alan Viller in the boom. It's like a boat. And this is like random kids walking in Kuwait. However, this copy was destroyed during the Iraqi invasion in 1990. Archivists who wish to examine the film now can only have access to it from Royal Museum in Greenwich. However, as a foundational exemplar of Kuwaiti media, the loss of the copy associated material remain a significant loss for Kuwaiti archivists. Notably, this is not the only example of historical records that was destroyed. There may have been others destroyed. but we are unable to locate these copies. The second phase I associate with the expansion of cinema, which were initially limited to the oil workers, but were increasingly made available to Kuwaiti citizens after the 60s. During this period, Kuwaitis began to produce their own films reflective of their history, culture, and tradition. However, I also note that this phase coincides with increase of government censorship. These early films are often reflected to the oil era, pre-oil era, and showcase Kuwaiti tradition and culture for the Kuwaiti perspective, while some early examples remain in the record. These films are increasingly difficult to locate and preserve. The second phase conclude and interpreted by the Iraqi invasion and destruction of archive. On 2nd of August 1990, Iraq invaded Kuwait. The Ministry of Information Archive suffered extensive damage due to the looting, fire, and deliberate destruction. This is I found actually a small shot from the Ministry of Information where it was destroyed during the invasion. It is unknown how many other films have been lost, additionally giving to the fragility of film without preservation and proper archival storage. The condition of these films may be rapidly deteriorating. We can see here that some of the film reels has been cut, some has been stolen, destroyed, and damaged. It caused like a massive destruction. Some people claim that they found some films in the bin. Others, they don't know where are they. And some other filmmakers, they were like saying it's hard for them to restore their films as they cannot find the reels. Following the invasion and the period restoration that followed beginning in the early 2000s, early 2000s, there has been a massive boom in the domestic film industry. In the second phase, from 70 to 2000, an average of three Kuwaiti films were made per decade. In the first decade of the 21st century, film production tripled. From 2010 to 2020, an astonishing of 37 films were produced, feature films. Many of these films directly engage with Kuwaiti's experience of colonization and provide representation of Gulf conflict from the perspective of Kuwaiti citizens. Given that these proceed the destruction of archives and are easier to access in digital forms, they capture an important reflection of Kuwaiti citizen experience throughout the invasion and serve important contribution to Kuwaiti film industry. For Kuwaiti film scholars and archivists, it is important to attend of each of these three phases to recognize the nation contribution of film in the region. As the third phase continues and examples of domestically produced media and film continue to increase, it is especially important to acknowledge the legacy of Kuwaiti filmmakers who have recorded the nation history, culture, and tradition for future generations. As archivists examine three phases and acknowledge the three Kuwaiti film the role of Kuwaiti filmmakers have played in the region, four significant contributions should be recognized. First, throughout each of the three phases, Kuwaiti film have provided important portrait of Kuwaiti domestic life and culture that provide a valuable resources for archivists. The second, Kuwaiti filmmakers have provided important narrative of conflict and colonialism that reflect their own perspective and amplify their voices, as this difficult period of Kuwaiti history is preserved for the historical record. These films serve as an important text for understanding the period of invasion and the effect it had on Kuwaiti citizen and culture. Third, the early importation of home recording equipment, the rise of cinema industry, and now with the availability of streaming services, Kuwaiti film and television have made considerable contribution to film production technologies in the Gulf region. Fourth, from the early documentaries to more recent films that showcase the element of production that exhibit feature typical of Western blockbusters, programs that reflect wide range genre of variation. As a consequence of the invasion and the destruction of the building that housed the Ministry of Information, many archivists like myself are reliant on external archive and a British archival document, which have become crucial reference for understanding and reconstructing Kuwait's contribution to film and cinema. The absence of a dedicated Kuwaiti media archive continue to pose significant challenges to Kuwaiti film media scholars. However, recently Kuwait has begun to reassemble its archive. In March 2021, Iraq turned a significant number of archival material that were looted during the invasion. However, the process of cataloging and inventorying these materials will require additional government resource and support. Without government support and recognition, the significant contribution of Kuwaiti filmmaking and filmmakers may go unnoticed, hindering the visibility and appreciation of their artistic endeavors, both domestically and internationally. If Kuwaiti media or archive can be established, archivists will need to use all of the available resources to assemble a chronology of the nation's history and inhibit their contribution to film and television in the region. In this effort, I will encourage archivists to locate home videos record during the time of the invasion, with the availability of free sharing websites like YouTube, Vimeo, access to social media like Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. These videos are increasingly being published. Just one example, this video captures Kuwait's experience of the liberation following the invasion. Additionally, in effort to reflect the changing demographics associated with Kuwaiti film and television, I would encourage archivists to seek out examples that showcase contribution that women, Black people, Bedouin, and other marginalized group have made to Kuwaiti film. In closing, the destruction and recovery of film archive in Kuwait highlights that the challenges faced in preserving cultural heritage and recognizing the contribution that Kuwaiti has made to film in the Gulf region. However, despite the loss of archive, it remains possible to recognize the important role that Kuwaiti have played throughout each of the three phases of the evolution of the film industry has experienced. As a scholar, continue to use what remains to recognize these contributions. Future work is needed to continue the identification and preservation of archival material and call upon necessary resources to continue to uncover and recover the history and legacy of Kuwaiti filmmaking. I guess that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Najat. Now time to introduce our last presenter for this panel and also for this conference as a whole, Magdalena Heruday-Kiełczewska, and I'm sorry for mispronouncing the name. Magdalena is an assistant professor at the Faculty of History at Adam Mickiewicz University. She participated in various scientific and archival projects, including description and arrangement of archives of the Association Solidarité France-Pologne, as well as Le goût de l'archive à l'ère numérique project, so that is archives in the digital age, the taste of archives in the digital age. From March 2022, she is the coordinator of Archives of Help for Ukraine at the Adam Mickiewicz University. So thank you, Magdalena, and the floor is all yours.
Thank you very, very much. Excuse me, I will speak in French, but I prepared a presentation in English. And if you have questions in English, I will do my best to answer them. Merci beaucoup. Merci pour cette présentation. Merci aussi pour cette belle conférence. Je voudrais parler à propos des archives de l'aide. Le 24 février 2022, la Russie a attaqué le territoire de l'Ukraine. La guerre a commencé et elle dure jusqu'à aujourd'hui. Immédiatement après l'attaque, la société polonaise a commencé d'organiser l'aide matérielle et aussi de manifester dans les voies très variées sa solidarité. Alors, ils organisaient l'aide matérielle pour ceux qui ont resté en Ukraine et aussi pour ceux qui sont venus en Pologne. Cette mobilisation était vraiment immense. C'était quelque chose que je n'avais pas vu autrement parce que c'était les institutions officielles, c'était les institutions comme les écoles, les universités, c'était les personnes privées, les institutions non gouvernementales. Donc, c'était vraiment immense. C'était partout on organisait des transports de dons et des collections de dons. Alors, qu'est-ce qu'on collectait? Les vêtements, la nourriture pour ceux qui passaient de longues heures à la frontière avec la Pologne, qui sont décidés de quitter l'Ukraine. Et on collectait des médicaments, des pansements, surtout pour ceux qui ont resté en Ukraine. Et toutes les initiatives ont laissé des traces dans l'Internet. Donc, on pouvait voir sur Facebook les annonces. Le Facebook est plus populaire que le Twitter, donc c'est pourquoi je parle de Facebook, mais aussi sur le site officiel. Il y avait des annonces à propos de collections de dons. Il y a aussi les photographies. Il y a même le témoignage de ceux qui ont vécu les attaques et de ceux qui se sont allés pour aider à la frontière. Sachant comment fonctionne l'Internet, j'ai vu qu'après une année, après 2 ans, ça sera impossible de trouver tout ça, de trouver toutes les annonces, tous les posts. Voilà, ce ne sera pas impossible, mais ça sera difficile et il faudra vraiment savoir quel mot il faut utiliser pour trouver les posts. Alors, il me semblait d'être important de garder ces traces. En même temps, l'idée pareille de faire cette archive de l'aide est née au sud de la Pologne, au musée à Wrocław. Mais quand j'ai demandé est-ce que ce projet a réussi, j'ai reçu aucune réponse. Donc, je ne sais pas s'ils ont réussi vraiment de collecter toutes les traces de cette mobilisation polonaise parce qu'ils voulaient faire le projet global, le projet pour rassembler tout ce qui s'est passé en Pologne. Premièrement, j'ai pris les contacts avec eux et ils m'ont dit vous pouvez faire quelque chose pareil si vous avez la même idée. Et c'est pourquoi je fais les archives de l'aide de Archives of Help à mon université parce que pour moi c'était impossible de tracer tout ce qui s'est passé et même dans ma ville. Donc je me dis il faut faire quelque chose même dans mon travail. Alors, j'ai reçu l'autorisation de mon doyenne et de mon recteur. Et de mars, je suis la coordinatrice, je m'occupe de ce projet. C'est le projet qui a pour le but de recueillir des photographies, des captures d'écran de pages web qui concernent l'engagement des étudiants, des doctorants, de docteurs, de professeurs et aussi des autorités de l'université en faveur des Ukrainiens. D'abord, je fais une lettre officielle qui a été annoncée, mais parfois aussi je demandais des organisateurs de convois s'ils avaient des photographies, des documents lesquels ils pouvaient déposer aux archives. Le suivant, s'il vous plaît. Voilà. J'avais deux inspirations. Première inspiration, c'était cette période de solidarité et la loi martiale, c'était au début des années 80. Vraiment, c'était l'époque très, très dure pour la Pologne parce qu'on manquait de tout. Toutes les libertés gagnées par la solidarité étaient supprimées, les gens étaient internés, étaient arrêtés. Et c'était le pays de l'Ouest qui envoyait le colis, qui envoyait des dons pendant toutes les périodes des années 80. Vous pouvez voir ici à gauche, ce sont les photographies de décembre 1981. Et quand j'ai vu ce qui se passe en Pologne l'année dernière, je me dis, mais c'est la même chose. Je crois que c'est la même idée. Et parfois, les gens en Pologne disent que nous aidons aux Ukrainiens parce que nous savons comment c'est être attaqué. Mais moi, je dis que peut-être les gens aussi organisent de l'aide parce qu'ils ont reçu de l'aide au passé. Peut-être c'est ça. Le suivant, s'il vous plaît. La deuxième.
Si jamais vous voulez une très courte traduction de ce qui a été dit, parce que les images, vous faites comme signe, là, je ne sais pas qui comprend français ou pas. So those who want like a little translation from 1 or 2 sentences, just let me know so we can. I think it's fine.
La deuxième inspiration, c'était le projet qui était fait par mes collègues français pour collecter la capture d'écran de tweets après les attaques en novembre 2015 à Paris. Et pour moi, c'est de l'inspiration. Alors, on peut faire la capture d'écran de réseaux sociaux et ça peut être la source historique. C'était quelque chose qui m'a inspiré aussi. Le suivant, s'il vous plaît. Il y a quelques groupes principal de documents. D'abord, il y a les lettres générales de newsletters qui étaient envoyées à tout le personnel de l'université. Et là, on peut trouver, par exemple, la lettre de notre Madame Recteur qui exprimait la solidarité de notre université et qui condamnait la guerre et qui aussi annonçait que l'université Adam Mickiewicz a arrêté les contacts scientifiques avec les universités en Russie. L'autre groupe, ce sont les captures d'écran de Facebook et des sites Internet. J'ai étudié des profils variés, profils officiels de notre université, de nos facultés, des organisations des étudiants, aussi des professeurs. Je cherchais profils officiels et pas les profils privés parce que après, quelqu'un va me dire qu'il ne veut pas que ça reste partout ce qu'ils ont écrit. Ça, je comprends parfaitement. Et dans ces captures, il y a vraiment les informations très détaillées, par exemple, à propos de ce qui est collecté. Il y a aussi je dirais, le communiqué des autorités universitaires. Alors, Facebook est devenu, je dirais, le moyen principal de communication avec toute la société universitaire, et même plus, parce que ce ne sont pas seulement les étudiants, ce sont par exemple les gens qui ont déjà terminé les études, qui regardent qu'est-ce qu'il y a qu'est-ce qu'il y a publié. Troisième groupe, c'est la correspondance entre notre recteur, responsable des relations internationales, et le professeur qui s'occupait de certaines actions, comme soutenu par exemple des sociologues ukrainiens. J'avais un accord de notre vice-recteur qui a dit oui, je peux vous envoyer ma correspondance et je sais que les autres personnes étaient aussi d'accord. Un quatrième groupe, ce sont les comptes rendus préparés dans les facultés, dans les bibliothèques de l'université, avec la description de tout ce qu'ils faisaient. Alors, par exemple, les bibliothèques organisaient plusieurs fois la vente de livres, les facultés de sciences politiques organisaient les meetings de solidarité, les expositions de photographie qui étaient prises par les étudiants pendant les manifestations contre la guerre. Mais il faut dire aussi que la plus grande intensité des activités a eu lieu l'année dernière. Mais qu'est-ce qui nous reste? Aujourd'hui, il y a beaucoup de témoignages de la coopération parce que ce sont, par exemple, les écoles d'hiver, les écoles d'été qui ont lieu maintenant. Et ça montre la coopération entre notre université et l'université ukrainienne. Alors, nous n'en voyons pas dedans parce que nous savons qu'ils n'ont pas besoin de ça. Nous envoyons parfois, par exemple, le pansement, mais ça, c'est pour les hôpitaux et nous savons qu'il y a l'hôpital concret qui a besoin. Le suivant, s'il vous plaît. Voilà, vous pouvez voir le lettre de notre recteur. C'était affiché sur Facebook. C'était en ukrainien et en polonais. Suivant, s'il vous plaît. Voilà, c'est le cours pour les instituteurs qui travaillaient avec les enfants de l'Ukraine. Suivant. Voilà, vous voyez la collection de dons dans la faculté de sciences politiques. Oui, on peut passer. Et voilà, c'est l'école d'hiver qui était en mars cette année. Depuis mars, c'était la première, je crois, ou la 12e. Et il y en avait 10 ou 12 rencontres comme ça. Suivante. Merci. Alors, quelques mots à propos de classement. Au début, je ne savais pas comment classer ces documents, qui sont très variés, mais en même temps, ils sont tous électroniques. Donc, je ne savais pas de quoi attendre. Je ne savais pas quel sujet pourront être dans ce document. Tout ça évoluait. Alors, après quelques mois, j'ai décidé de classer en accord avec la structure de l'école. Alors, le document de l'université, le document de recteur et de faculté, de librairie, et dans chaque groupe de documents, j'ai aussi essayé de séparer les événements ou certaines activités. Voilà, suivant, s'il vous plaît. Et ce sont, à mon avis, ce sont vraiment les sources nouveaux. Et j'ose dire même que toute la documentation produite dans ce sujet, cette l'aide pour l'Ukraine, cette coopération avec l'Ukraine était même non numérique, born digital. Parce que quand on a préparé une affiche qui annonçait la vente de livres suivante, vous pouvez passer, voilà. Vous pouvez voir, c'était le vente de livres. Il y a un poster, une affiche qui annonçait qu'il y a le vente de livres. Et voilà, cette affiche était faite en façon électronique d'abord, était imprimée après. Alors, je n'avais pas besoin papier commun. Je suis toujours en train de collecter le compte rendu parce que quand j'ai lancé un appel, j'attendais le compte rendu. Je n'étais pas sûre si quelqu'un va préparer quelque chose pour moi. Mais ça, c'est très curieux parce que normalement, quand on travaille dans les archives, nous avons un corpus plus ou moins complet. Et ici, ce sont les documents qui ont été faits spécialement pour les archives. Et ce sont les archives qui attendent un document. Alors, les documents sont versés presque immédiatement après la création. Donc, c'est quelque chose, je dirais, extraordinaire, quelque chose, je dirais peut-être pas bizarre, mais qu'on ne fréquente pas, à vrai dire. Alors, moi, je peux voir aussi, je peux regarder comment les documents sont créés. C'est pour moi aussi une expérience très, très enrichie. Et en même temps, il est très facile de faire ces documents accessibles parce que je peux envoyer un lien à mon recteur pour montrer qu'est-ce que j'ai. C'est très facile, mais pour l'instant, nous n'avons pas décidé de faire, par exemple, le site Internet parce qu'il y a toujours les données personnelles, il y a le nom, le prénom, il y a le visage sur les photos. Donc, c'est la question très délicate, à mon avis, la création de sites Internet, par exemple. Le dernier, s'il vous plaît, merci. Pour conclure, cette collection n'est pas très grande, mais elle donne la preuve de l'engagement de toute la communauté de l'Université Adam-Mickiewicz. J'aimerais qu'elle sera enrichie par les interviews avec les personnes qui jouaient le rôle principal dans ce processus. Ces documents peuvent être intéressants pour ceux qui vont faire les recherches sur la réaction polonaise à la guerre en Ukraine, mais aussi à cette guerre en général, parce que les documents, la capture d'écran, tout ça, ça montre aussi quels étaient les besoins des Ukrainiens, de quoi ils avaient besoin, mais quels étaient aussi les moyens, quelles étaient les idées de l'aide. Pour ceux qui ont resté, mais aussi, ça je veux souligner, aussi pour ceux qui sont venus en Pologne. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Magdalena. Thank you again, Rebecca and Najat. I think now it's time to open the discussion with comments and questions, either coming from the people online or from the room. Not all at the same time, please. I have plenty of questions. Okay, Brad, thank you.
Je pose la question en français ou en anglais?
As you wish.
Okay, well, je vais poser la question en français. Donc, Magdalena, vous avez évoqué en passant la nature éphémère des archives. Vous avez évoqué aussi l'enjeu éthique qui est implicite dans la collecte de ces archives. Et est-ce que vous pouvez nous proposer des outils pour la collecte, justement, pour télécharger ou pour collecter les données sur Internet, comme les posts sur Facebook, sur le site? Quel type d'outils est-ce que vous avez utilisé pour pouvoir constituer cette archive?
Excusez-moi, quel type de quoi?
Quel type d'outils?
D'outils, d'accord.
Est-ce qu'il y a des logiciels spécialisés pour télécharger les...
Non, non, il n'y a pas. En fait, j'avais besoin seulement de mon ordinateur ou mon portable.
Donc, vous avez fait des captures d'écran ou...
Oui, oui, simplement. Oui, et je sais que c'est, par exemple, ce groupe ABNF, il faisait les captures d'écran, il faisait aussi comme ça. Simplement, les captures d'écran, et c'est tout. Il n'a pas le logiciel, à mon avis. Après, on peut discuter comment on peut faire l'inventaire, par exemple, la base de données. Mais c'est une autre question.
Maybe just to translate for those who don't understand French, Brett was asking if she used any tools, specific tools to collect the data online, and most of the data was collected like manually with print screens.
Thank you. Okay, so I have one for Dadzie. You present this three phases through which Kuwait cinema developed, and I was wondering if I'm not mistaken, like the third phase is coming in a sense after the invasion, or largely after the invasion. So how does that make the archive you're working with imbalance in terms of there's much more recent work and very little pieces from the two previous phases, and is it like that you're dealing with as a problem, I would say?
Yes, actually, I faced several problems because the data we don't have in Arabic, it's very rare, and we don't have a lot of academic researchers who are interested in archiving, and because, well, film industry is considered in Kuwait a recent technology because it started in late 30s, but comparing to the States or Egypt or other countries where they started way earlier, even in France, way earlier than Kuwait. So I had to look at the British political records and documents just to track what was before the invasion. And then during the invasion, I was looking at people like, I did a personal interview with one of the filmmakers who claimed that he's actually a famous Kuwaiti director. He passed away. But he made the first feature film, and he claimed that he had a film reel. It was recorded in 16 milli. His film is called Shaheen. He directed the film in 1983, but during the invasion, the whole reel was burned, and he had some copies in UK. And then he had to repair it, but unfortunately he couldn't because there were like really some severe damages. So it's really hard to track everything, and that's why I call for people to share what they have in that phase via social media, video on demand, YouTube. Nowadays you can find a lot of British American videos during the invasion, and it really could be used as an archive. So yeah, I faced a little bit of difficulties, but hopefully now the ministry is trying to reconstruct the archival, and hopefully people will, put what they have, and then we could use those materials.
So much.
I hope I answered your question.
Yes, you did. Thank you. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, I have a question for Rebecca. I think Dadzie already kind of answered it. You are dealing with very fragmented archives that are incomplete, that a lot of documents that that did exist are not there anymore. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how this affects the media historical research. Is there a significant bias, you think, in the media historical research because explicitly because of this fragmentedness in the archives? Are there topics that are dealt with a lot and topics that are not dealt with at all because the audiovisual archive is not there, as an example?
This is to me, right? So, okay, so I mean, the archives that the GBC, which is the national, television station, has, is supposed to be, some kind of a national repository where almost everything that is produced, you would find, copies in there. Of course, after the fires of 1988, a lot of the materials got burnt. But I guess the crux of my argument is that when we look beyond, the obvious, there's always the possibility to, locate what at first probably was not so visible. And that is why I call for some of these egalitarian, practices where, anybody who has a copy, just, bring it and then all that. Yes, I mean, Osofo Dadzie, the content is was mostly just social cultural stuff, mostly those were the themes. What made it stand out was the fact that they were able to sometimes comment on current issues happening in the country. So the country wants to train people about changing the driving lanes from right to left. The president will contract this group to, to develop shows around that. So they became very, very important. And so most of the contents that they produced really were about, if you watch them, they were about Ghana's, history, Ghana's social history, things that had happened, and they would dramatize it and another. So now with just what we have, we are still able to, construct or reconstruct at least what was there. Now, one of the things that we argued out in this study is that we take, heritage to be a present construction. And so the memories or the remnants, what we found for us were useful for present, generations to be able to use that to create, other contents. So the memory for me is what is probably going to live on more than the physical, like in terms of Osofo Dadzie, because what we found, we cleaned, it really hurts me that you couldn't see the video, but what we found and then cleaned is not many. We had just about 15, and these are, 30, but anyway, we cleaned them, we gave them to the nation career, and we are hoping that, they said they will play it, but they have a lot of politics, they haven't played it yet, but we've done what we can, and we're hoping that the little can lead to further research in the area. I hope I answered the question.
Shirley, please.
This is a question for Najat. You framed the importance of this film in terms of ways. Okay, sorry. I also think, I work in a field that is about environmental stuff, and the whole area of petrocultures is quite important. And that element that you're speaking about the British colonial history, and that history leading to part of our environmental crisis, and these big questions that we face around oil. And I think it's true that most of the access to sort of the Gulf film repository is through the eyes of people who are able to access it in Britain. And I wonder, what that means in terms of the interpretation that Kuwaiti archivists or Kuwaiti filmmakers might be bringing to those kind of petroculture questions, and how you overcome that lack. And if you notice that absence in the voice in how these, the British petroleum films that we see and that people write about are framed or talked about.
I hope I understand your question correctly, but to answer this question, in the first phase, like I'm still working on writing like a whole research about the 3 phases. I think the first phase, it came with the let's say foreigners like British, Australian, American, other Europeans who were interested in the Gulf region because of the oil. Most of them used to work in the old field works. And then these people, because they were familiar with the technology of film and cinema, they used to, more professional than Kuwaitis, because Kuwaitis used to travel and trade. They used to import, but that was the higher class of people at that time, because there wasn't middle class before the oil discovery. So either rich or poor people. So mostly the elite or the high class people, they used to, import films and watch these films in their private spaces. But with the discovery of oil, people started to, in the first phase, they used to record, document those life in Kuwait. There are some documentaries on YouTube, but there isn't really much. We have to rely on British archives or other foreigners, because those people used to, more interested about archive. I think there should be more knowledge in Kuwait. I think we've learned our lesson during the invasion, that we should take care of our archives. And now with the technology, and you can store all your data now in Google Cloud or any other clouds, and then if anything happens, you can just access to the database, unlike before. I think the technology nowadays helped a lot, but I also think that more research needs to be done, especially to understand the first phase, because so many filmmakers nowadays, they don't know their history. Some people, even they misunderstand, they think in other countries were like the first, but it's not about who started first, but it's really important to know the history of the arrival of film in your country and how it evolved and how people reacted to it. Did I answer your question, or?
I mean, I guess the other aspect is just, you talked about it being important to Kuwait, but I think it makes a bigger contribution, because Kuwait is one of these Gulf states where there was colonial exploitation of oil. And if now we want to understand, how do we deal with climate change? How do we address these questions? I think Kuwaiti people and Kuwaiti archivists and filmmakers, probably have a contribution to make through how they might see those films, how they might critique them, that the world could appreciate. That's all.
Yeah, but most of people, especially after the invasion, they used to, especially Kuwaiti filmmakers, they used to produce because they felt threatened to their nationality. There were like deliberate destruction to erase the identity, and the government tried to, help filmmakers to produce films about the invasion as a part of, asserting the national identity. So there are like enormous of stories. We don't know even. There's like a short story entitled, a short film entitled Aziza. And I didn't know that there was a story about 2 guys who used to feed elephant during the invasion, about the zoo. It was the whole story about the zoo. It's not about, the suffer or the destruction. It's about people's story. So I think they could tell some stories about the invasion, but I think the first phase, that would need a lot of digging, because you really need to know more about censorship. Where did those laws come? We know that these were like in Arab countries, but every country has their own, parameters and restrictions. But we need to, more. I think after the first phase, it would be not that hard to, track everything, but it's the first phase that is hard to track it, because you need to rely on those really old archival, and I think the only reliable resources, it's the British record archival, because those were written by politicians, and you would know. And I use a secondary resources. I did interviews with the first filmmakers, and they passed away. I think I was lucky to interview them, and those are like can become a secondary resources just because, you know, not everything we can rely. Sometimes we need to do interview and, you know, rely on Arabic books, and since we don't have a lot of researchers about film, and yeah. Thank you for your contribution.
Thank you, Najat. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Magdalena. I think at this point, we're all a bit tired. Thanks, everyone. For those returning to your countries, well, safe travels. It was a pleasure to have you all in Montreal. For those staying with us a couple of extra days, well, enjoy the city. And yeah, that's it. Have a good day, everyone.